Great keynote speaker with Melissa earlier, in that we're here to learn. We're here to learn from each other. So I'm just going to throw out some advice. I've spoken at a lot of conferences. I'm going to throw that out there, the 3, 2, 1, and then you're going to talk to your neighbor so you know what's coming next and then after that. I want to encourage you to try your version of a 3, 2, 1 takeaway from any conference or anything your company is paying you to go to. So today, since we share an interest in ownership, potentially a conviction and a passion, but we'll discover that as we talk to each other in a moment. The 3 is, what are 3 absolutely doable ideas? It can be something new and different and exciting, or it could be something you used to do that you need to renew. Go back with 3 ideas. Talk to people at your company. Thank them for paying you to be here today to learn, grow, and network. But here's some 3 things. We've got to be selfish for our companies that are sending us in increasing headwind times. We're all here and getting paid, getting fed. Go back with things. So what's 3 ideas you can do? What are 2 that are 50-50? You're willing to fail, but you're going to try. Might work. Maybe one of the 2 works. Great, but you take a little bit of risk. The 1 is, what's that big, broad idea that you in this moment, or at the end of the day, as we close the session, are thinking, no chance, but I'm going to try anyway. If it ends up making conversations, potentially conversations that are uncomfortable, that lead to the next thing, can you go back and make some good trouble at your company? So the 3, 2, 1. You game on that? Okay, so what we're going to do is, again, channel Melissa. We're here to learn from each other. Your voice matters. We can learn as much from each other as peers in these environments as we can from some of the speakers. So what I'd like you to do is introduce yourself to your neighbor. If your neighbor is exceedingly familiar and you maybe traveled here together, the opportunity is the seatbelt light is off. You can move freely about the cabin. We're not expecting any turbulence. Maybe meet 1 or 2 people new, build your network a little bit. But what the big question in ownership is, what does ownership mean to you? Timeless question. I've asked literally thousands of people over the last 17 plus years, never gotten the same answer twice. Lots of themes, but what does it mean to you? And so to kind of bring it down, take a moment. Again, I'm going to leverage Melissa. She did a really cool thing. Who gets nervous to speak in front of any other humans, let alone a room like this? Okay, usually it's about 90% of healthy, high-functioning adults get nervous. What she did is with a big breath, so let's just borrow from a really good speaker. Take a nice deep breath. Intentional silence, reflection time. What does ownership mean to you? What are the 3 words today that you can think about? Give me some body language if we've got a few people that have 3 words to come to mind. And if not, we're going to wait. Panel as well. What 3 words in this moment on this beautiful day in Vermont? What does ownership mean to you? What are those 3 words? We have a very loud culture with constant deluge of information. When you hear a pause, when you spend time with me and us, it's to let you think, it's to let you process. We need to build in more pauses, a little more grace for each other. It's a busy, busy, mad, mad world out there. Try to set it aside for the day. Matt Kropp and crew, be here, be present, be selfish, be generous. If you would talk to your neighbor, maybe the panel can do the same thing. What does ownership mean to you? Who are you? What do you do? What's your company? And then get right into it. And we're going to be off and zooming with productivity from here. We good? Ready, set, go. Yeah. Love to have you come back to me when you're ready. Don't slam on the brakes. Finish your thought. We'll wait for you, but then come back. So what we want to do is hear a couple voices for those that are willing to share. and then we're going to introduce the panel. They'll share their 3 words, and we're off to the races, okay? Just so you understand the format of the rest of our time together, we've got almost an hour we can do a lot with. This is a PowerPoint-free, screen-free zone. If you take notes on your phone, go for it. That's fine. We had the panelists beforehand give us some of their thoughts, so I made a worksheet for you. Some people like worksheets, some people don't. But if you want to take home many of the key points that they're going to talk about, we handed you. So you want to make notes or highlight or add them, that's fine. But we wanted to give you a gift to go back to consider for your company, for your recruiting team, your retention folks and everything. So you sort of got the answer before the questions. Is that cool? All right. It's too much of my voice. This is my penultimate sentence. It's the one before the last. Who is game to share either your 3 words or the discussion at the table so we can hear from the audience? You can shout it out, or I can bring you the microphone. What are some 3 words that were going around the room? Please.
Responsibility, innovation, and wealth.
You get everybody hear that okay? Okay, good. Yeah, nice and loud. If you're good, I can put this thing down if I'm loud enough, but I want to be careful. We have lots of folks in employee-owned companies that use loud equipment. We need to be more respectful of hearing disruption as a common workplace disruption, so we want to do that beyond multiple languages and other things. But it's very good for us all to recommit to being thoughtful with hearing disruption. So I'll go with this for now. Say yours again, nice and loud.
Responsibility, wealth, and innovation.
Nice. So here's what I want you to do. I'd love to hear a couple more. If that is not in your recruiting language, you are missing the game, okay? So this is personal. Ownership is personal. What you just shared at your table, I hope you are vacuuming that up and bringing it back with you, because that's what you should be leading with. Other words, other voices, please. So I'm out there in a tough hiring environment, and I hear purpose, community, and security. Tell me more, right? Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. Others? A couple more, please.
Empowerment, teamwork, and achievement.
Empowerment, teamwork, and achievement. Who in the room has felt that at every work experience, even for 5 minutes? You might get some hires out of this room, right? So if you think about it means something to me, but you bring it into translatable terms, those kinds of discussions, which you can go back and do the same exercise at your company, what's so magical about working at PC Constructions, right? They'll answer. They've collected a bunch of bright, intense people, and they will let you know. And people will hear that, and they will come. So I just want you thinking about that as an activity you can take back. So we want to introduce the panel. Got a really neat mix of experience and talent. So who are you, your company, and if you're willing to share your words.
Absolutely. Is this working?
You're good.
All right. Hi, everyone. My name is Mike Scanlon. I work at King Arthur Baking Company. I'm a manager of workforce acquisition and growth. My 3 words were passion, commitment, and wealth.
Good morning, everybody. Carolyn Stone. I work for Hypertherm Associates. I'm the Director of Talent Acquisition and People Operations. My 3 words were shared purpose, shared values, shared responsibility, risk. The second one was impact. And the third was investment.
That's good, then I don't have to turn it on. So that was helpful, thank you. I'm Linda Kronoff. I'm the Director of People and Culture at Hallam-ICS. So Hallam is an engineering and controls automation firm. And my 3 words are transparency, opportunity, and financial wealth.
Hi, good morning. My name is Kaitlyn Keenan. I'm a senior job cost engineer at PC Construction, and my words were team, pride, and accountability.
Awesome. And I didn't introduce myself. I'm Jesse from Hypertherm Associates. I work with Carolyn. Used to work for her. She was an awesome leader. Borrowing a little bit, any Celtics fans in the house? Anybody? So I'm just going to borrow, I'm not going to borrow, I'm going to plagiarize. I would say my 3 words are it's different here. All right, so try to put you at ease, make a connection, leave with some gold for those who decided to clean up at your table and think about incorporating those words, an activity you can do when you get home to empower your recruiting language. I want to shift gears to panel advice. So for the panel, if you want to contribute, you may. You don't all 4 have to go. It's always tough. Like when I do the owner podcast, I always try to be careful with the third person who's speaking because they might be like, ditto that. I second that motion, I third that motion. So as always, if you have something that you're compelled to speak on, please do, and if not, we'll keep on chugging. But I want to start the first one with each of you giving your advice or an example from your company of how do you lead. We're going to do recruiting first, and then we're going to talk about retention, then we'll have some social time, we'll close. The time goes quick with panels. Who wants to go first? A little bit about Kaitlyn, PC Construction. How do you incorporate ownership in your recruiting process or language? And if you have any specific advice you'd encourage the participants to go home with, please do.
Yeah, I'll start with a very specific example, I guess, or program that is pretty near to what I do. So at PC, we have a leadership development program for folks going into operations, new college grads mostly. And it's about a 2.5 to 3 year rotation program. Brady happens to be in it right now. And so I think that one thing that does is it allows graduates who, we talked earlier about not knowing maybe what you want to do, to come into PC to see different areas of the business, figure out what you like, what you're good at, get to interact with a lot of people. We do work from Maine to Florida, so there's an opportunity to move geographically, and maybe people find something there that they like more. And at the end of that program, there's a couple different paths that people can choose, a couple different roles they can take. And that sets them up to take that first role. It shows that there's opportunity for growth and development, but it also gives them the skills and the connections to be able to change positions later on. So as an example for me, I went up through the program as a project engineer up to a project manager for a couple of years, had a child, needed to stay a little bit closer to home, and then transitioned into the role that I'm in now, as well as leading this leadership development program. So it's given me specifically some really great opportunities to not go in exactly one path, and I think that really resonates for people. I know that that's a really strong attractor for people who are looking to PC, and I think really just helps to reinforce that ownership mentality that I have a path, or I can change that path if my life changes too.
Other thoughts, Carolyn?
Yeah, so I have spent almost 12 years at Hypertherm Associates, and I started as a recruiter. So I was on the front lines, attracting talent, talking with talent about our opportunities. I think that there is a lot of question when a recruiter reaches out to somebody who isn't familiar with an employee-owned company, right? It sounds too good to be true, right? They've had varying different degrees of experience at their current employers, and you're talking about profit sharing, and you're talking about employee stock, and you're talking about participatory decision-making, and all these things that are just foreign for many individuals. And so your recruiters need to bring that alive for your candidates, right? And so a lot of times during the interview process, whether or not it's a screening process or even before that, the job posting, it's very generic, it's very dry, right? We're talking about the job. We're not talking about the opportunity of joining an employee-owned company. And that's a really important part. You've got to bring it alive to people so they know what to expect and make sure that what you're sharing is going to match what they show up to receive, right? You can't oversell because the dream seems too good to be true. So bring it alive in your job posting. Share different words, different parts of your culture so people get excited about it before any recruiter or person in HR even talks to them, or a leader if that's your process. Second of all, take part of that interview process to share that information again and have different parts of your company reiterate those things. How did they see employee ownership? What is important to them? How is it coming alive for them in their daily work? That's going to mean much more to those candidates than having a recruiter or somebody in HR tell them how good the world's going to be once they join your company, right? So that live time. And then just make sure that there is that time for them to experience your culture as well. Have them come in, have them see the various different ways that employee ownership come alive, and work that into your employee branding as well. We actually have, I think it's 4 years old now, so 3 or 4 years old. Our employment brand is Own It, right? Own your career, own your company, own your future. Own your future, own your company. And that's really important, right, to get that message out and how their daily work can be different and they can actually have a part of a company much larger than the part that they've probably had already.
Yeah, I'm going to piggyback just a little bit off of that, but I would highly recommend never miss an opportunity with a candidate to talk about ownership. Don't ignore the two sides of ownership, which are the monetary side, the wealth side, as well as the cultural side, and speak to both of them very clearly and from the very get-go. One of the things we do when we're speaking to a candidate for the first time is we have a specific part of our phone screen dedicated to discussion about ownership. And we reinforce that throughout the entirety of the process. That conversation doesn't end. And by the way, it doesn't end once they're hired either. We'll talk about that when we talk about retention, but that continues on. Never miss that opportunity because it's a nearly impossible concept to fully articulate within 1, 2, 3, or even 5 conversations. And so we have to make sure we're constantly talking about it because that one conversation is not going to bring home what it means to someone, especially someone who's never worked at an employee-owned company or perhaps never even heard of an employee-owned company.
Okay, I think we're good now. So just to tag off of what other folks have said is we found that it's really helpful to talk with your candidates and kind of understand, what's of interest to them because some folks are really interested in so how does your company run since it's employee owned? Or, how is the culture different? And other folks are interested in what does that mean for my retirement? So when I was recruiting here at UVM at the career fair, I got the most questions about, so I see your company is employee owned. What does that mean? And I'm like, okay, so what about it are you interested in? And it was a lot about, what does that mean for the culture? Am I going to find out what's going on? Do I get to vote on things? How does this work? So we'll tailor our communications to what they're interested in. So when new folks are coming on, I'll explain, hey, you're going to get a lot of emails about utilization and here's how the finances are going or here's new projects because we're very transparent. When we're looking at mid-level employees who have worked somewhere else, they may have had a different experience. So they're looking to understand, are you going to tell us when things aren't good? I don't want to be surprised. Or when you're talking with folks who are more financially oriented, they do want to hear about, okay, there's wealth here for me. There's the potential for me to have an impact. So I think we've found that there's such a range, just like what we heard with everybody's words, that you want to kind of see what's important to them and then make sure you're communicating that.
Yeah, that's great. A couple additions, if your game is you can't tell culture. We can collect bright, excited people or folks who are who is this for real, and then over time they come around, whether it's their share balance, their daily experience. So if you can introduce ownership with sort of 3 main pillars. After, again, years of this is what I've settled on. I hope it works for you. What is the daily experience? Does it feel good to go to work? Is the job quality and security better than what somebody might have experienced before? And the long-term wealth building potential. So if you can break it down. Another way to introduce it is, have you ever wanted your voice to matter? Have you ever been full of ideas? Again, I'm a fan of Melissa's, which is clear, so I'm just going to call myself out for that. But she had her ideas flicked away. the opposite has to be normalized in employee ownership, but you have to give people room to not be used to that. So it's a reverse peer pressure. Instead of, hey, you got to sit there for 6 months at a meeting before you speak up, just listen. It's the opposite. The first day is like, listen, we've all been together for a while and are pretty excited about this place, but maybe we could have some blind spots. What do you see? You got to ask questions. You know, so it's setting that sort of tone. And then from initial conversations, the ultimate behavior of employee ownership in any form of ownership is continuous improvement. You know, some ideas aren't going to make it, but the idea that you keep producing them and keep sharing them, and what can that help for job quality, what can that help for profitability, what can that help for safety. So if you can make smaller bites. And when it comes to the shares, who here goes into a deep dive on the 401k on the first day or month? Okay? So don't do that with the shares. Be nice. There's a basic thing that can get missed when you start talking about shares and ownership is, I'm not asking you to actually come up here. I just want to make a point as a community that's highly engaged. Who in the room would be game to come up here and explain shares? If the people you're hiring, Carolyn hires, her team hires we have a lot of frontline workers. So if they don't fully understand how to leverage their own finances, and they might not even know how shares work, don't shoot way up here with your enthusiasm, because it can be incredibly alienating. Nobody likes a human talking to them, whether they mean well or not, that makes them feel stupid. And that is a risk in the ownership, especially enthusiasm, and you've settled into your ESOP or co-op and you got a good groove. If 7 out of 10 people are leaving companies because of a bad relationship with a leader or a conflict with their values, you got 7 out of 10 hires that probably going to need some time to believe, is this true? And you give them permission early on, like, this is a lot to take in. It only takes 3 or 4 years for people to get the hang of it, so don't rush yourself. So those are a couple of thoughts from I wanted to add. Please.
So, and I just want to add to that too. You made me think of something, Jesse. It's about knowing where your candidate is at with their employment journey, right? So different things resonate with different people. Yes, we have stocks, but we don't go heavy on the stock. We mention it. It's part of our total rewards philosophy. It's part of employee ownership. But somebody who is new to employment isn't thinking about their retirement, right? They're thinking about other pieces of collaboration and building experience and being a part of a community. So it's just making sure that we're, meeting those candidates where they are and making sure to resonate with them, what they're going to find most valuable at that time. And then the rest of it builds, right? Once they start being there and seeing all of the benefits and working and learning about their job and the opportunities, then you start building that additional experience through learning opportunities as well.
Nice. So there's a consistent theme of sort of curiosity, sharing. My paraphrasing is small bites and let them be curious is what I heard. That said, to try to give the participants something, a starting point, Candyland, start here or whatever, is there a particular theme that comes you find inquiry on, or is it where would you start cold if you're going to introduce ownership during a conversation? So whatever happens with your branding, like our Own It branding or whatever you're doing, you're having a first screening call or an exchange with somebody. Do you find particular themes? Where would you start? Cold open, what works for you? Because I know you do it in every conversation. Do you mind starting? What are your thoughts, Mike?
Yeah, absolutely. So from the get-go, the first conversation is very much basic. We're not at that point going into the details beyond. For us, we'll share the percentage of what our typical annual percentage contribution into the ESOP is. But past that, I'm not going unless I'm prompted by the candidate asking questions, and some will. Of course, then we'll start to dive in deeper. But starting really with the basic, and I would tend to spend a lot more time talking about the cultural aspect of what it's like to work at King Arthur as an employee-owned company than I do the nuts and bolts of an ESOP, particularly in that first conversation. As we get to the point of offer with someone, we're typically going to be getting a lot more specific at that point. But starting really broad, really simple, and not getting into the weeds is really the key, because as it's been pointed out multiple times, that's not going to be an effective way to get someone excited. They're probably not going to understand what you're talking about from the get-go, and so it's not really an effective way.
I will say the first time that they really see that that's going to come true is when you hand them a stock certificate. And now it's real, right? And then you get the domino effect past that.
I would echo the culture focus. Just what is it like to work here, and what does it feel like to work here, and what is that experience? Definitely, from my experience, I haven't gotten into the nuts and bolts and the dollars and stuff. And I would say I also work more with earlier career people. So I know for myself, like the dollars didn't seem as real or as important in those early years. So, but people coming out of college and new employees really want to know what it's going to feel like to work somewhere. So that's what I focused on.
Please. We're going to do them next. Go ahead. Lauren, do you want to add anything?
I was just going to say that, no, of course I've lost my train of thought. But again, I think it's your differentiator. So you can hire folks. So again, we're engineering. They could work at any engineering firm. So that's not what's different. What's different is, hey, here, we're interested in your ideas. You have the opportunity to help us all be successful. So that's appealing to a lot of folks. I mean, if folks want to come in and they just want to sit down and do their thing, okay, this might feel like a little bit more than what they're used to. But for the folks that have really not felt like they've had an opportunity or are just getting out of school and really excited, that's your differentiator. It's a little bit different here. We operate a little bit differently.
So Linda, just putting you on the spot here, how long do you think it takes somebody coming into your organization to start to feel it, see it, or trust it? How long does that generally take?
I think trust takes longer, because I do think you need to see, oh, did you just hear about the share price and things? But I think culture, right away. You know, I think within those first few months, they're seeing the emails that say, hey, you know, this is how the company's doing. These are the jobs that we've booked. This is what's happening, you know, good, bad, you know, whatever. And that's usually different. And it's a little bit eye-opening of like, oh, it's actually what you said it was going to be like. And that's always, you know, that's our best thing in HR, is to hear, yep, it is what we said it was.
So you're telling me as a new person, I have some time to be new? How many people would have loved that in your work history? Just a basic way of, right? You know, it's okay to be, you can be highly productive as soon as you're ready, but we expect you to be new for about a year, and we don't expect you to really get your hands around this ownership thing for 3 to 5 years. All we want out of your first day is that you go home feeling like you made a good choice, and you come back tomorrow and double your tenure and go from there. If you know where and when to be, and where to put your coat, where to go to the bathroom, and you remember 2 names, we won. You know, so if you can sort of start the expectation of a journey. Did you want to add?
Yeah, I just want to share a personal story. So I agree. I mean, I think people show up and they see parts that make it come real to them. But then I'm going to answer with an HR answer. It depends. It depends on the role. It depends on the people around that particular role and how they're sharing their experiences and inviting that culture to come alive. I can think about starting at Hypertherm as a recruiter. I worked prior to Hypertherm at a very, very large, top-down managed organization where you pretty much didn't speak a whole lot unless you spoke with the proper channels and through the proper paths. And I came to Hypertherm, base level recruiter, and I was invited into a meeting with varying different degrees of leadership, including VP leadership. And I was there to listen. I was there to learn. I was there to just be in the room with other people about a conversation that I honestly really didn't know a whole lot about, being somebody new. And I remember as I was listening, the VP of manufacturing at the time all of a sudden at the end said, Carolyn, what do you think? And in that moment, and I'm going to get a little misty because this is one of my kind of lollipop moments at Hypertherm where I realized I wasn't in Kansas anymore. This was a different place. This was a place where I actually had value. I had a voice and I had impact. And I remember saying to the VP of manufacturing at the time, going, oh no, I'm just here to listen, because that's what I had been programmed to say, right? That was my experience prior to coming into Hypertherm. And then I came and he goes, but you're in the room. We want to hear your opinion. We want to hear your thoughts. They might be different than ours. And at that point, that was the first real sign, right? It wasn't on a billboard. It wasn't on a sign on the wall. It was a real, true, tangible, felt example to me that my voice there mattered, and it was expected for me to have one, right? And we all go through different periods of time where the voice might be stronger or a little bit muted, but it was expected, and I learned it that day.
That's great. And if you can, on the first day, this is the way I say it when we welcome people on the first day. They've gone through the candidate experience. And they land as your introduction to performance management is you got to ask a lot of questions. The more questions you ask, the better we're going to feel. The fewer questions you ask, get ready for a bunch of us to ask you what's going on. How can we help you reset and thrive? So it's not what people are used to, but you got to set that right away, is that we want to hear the voices in the room. Often the fresh eyes, my grandfather, woodworkers, where's my pencil, where's my pencil? Well, Papa, it's behind your ear. You've been looking for it for an hour. It's it's fresh eyes. You walk into it and you see it. If you can set that tone, it's very meaningful. But also selfishly for your business, they might see that something's broken, whether they have the degree for it or the title or whatever. Get the quiet voices in the room, give them an outlet that's comfortable for them. You'd be amazed the velocity you can add to your business, and it also goes to retention. So what I want to do is, we're right on track. What I want to do is welcome questions around recruitment. We'd love to hear any wisdom in the room, if something you have that you're proud of and you're bursting to share so that the rest of us can selfishly take it back to our companies, please share. And then we'll talk about retention after that. Is that cool? Do you want to shout it out, or Mike?
Yeah, so even though I have a mature business, I'm just getting to the stage of ownership now. And what I've been hearing is a lot of fantastic ideas about recruitment. But what I'm really wondering is the other side of the coin. Could I get the panel's opinion of what your 3 qualities are in a candidate that you're looking at, that you want to bring into your company? What are the things there's a lot of things to consider. When it comes down to 3 most important that you need in a person that's going to join a worker, an owner type of environment, what are you looking for?
That's an awesome question. I can just see their wheels spinning. I'm buying them a little time to think. Awesome question. Thank you. What 3 qualities?
Yeah, what a good question. So I will use one of the same 3 words I used at the beginning first, which is passion. I think the passion is really going to go a long way as we're thinking about, and when I say passion, I don't mean passion specific to anything. It doesn't even need to be specifically passion for their role or their function, but passion for the mission of your organization, and passion for bringing their whole self to what they're doing at your organization. So that would be my first word. The second one is curiosity. I think that professional curiosity to understand not just, again, your own space, but the entirety of the organization is really important at an employee-owned company because, again, we're employee owners of our entire organization. So having that curiosity is going to go a long way. And when I'm talking to a candidate, that's one that it often comes through. You can see when you're talking to someone. Is it the type of interview where they don't have a single question? They don't seem to be curious at all about even the role, let alone the company, versus that candidate that many of you have probably talked to or been before, where you have all kinds of questions and you're so curious as to what might be going on already. So that's the other next big thing I look for. And the last one, and I think this one's perhaps more personal, but I think just enthusiasm. It doesn't need to be an outward enthusiasm. I am myself described as an introvert, so when I think about enthusiasm, I'm not referring to the type of person who can be outwardly enthusiastic at all times, because that's not who people are at all times. But enthusiasm and just that excitement for the opportunity and excitement for, again, learning and understanding, that goes a long way. So Enthusiasm, passion, and curiosity would be the three I'd point to.
Can I just add to that? Because what I was waiting to hear, and it was perfect, really, is you didn't say anything about the job skill. In other words, it was the person qualities that you were looking at the most. I just want to.
Yes, most definitely, most definitely.
Look at all of us introverts up here on the stage. I feel so seen with that comment because I'm in a very external-facing role, and I'm very much an introvert. Go figure. Okay, so he took curiosity, so that was one of mine. So I'll give you three others. So ditto on curiosity. So the first one that I will say is kind of echoing curiosity, critical thinking. Critical thinking ties into innovation. You see something that needs to be fixed or could be better, and you're thinking through that. The second, I would say, is integrity. We want owners that are going to do the right thing, even if somebody isn't standing over them, watching them, and telling them what to do. And then the third kind of goes along the lines with integrity, but it's personal accountability. It's personal accountability for the role that they're playing, right? So whether or not they are doing tasks, building product, in a meeting, out in the public, whatever, it's personal accountability to represent the organization and do the right thing, tied back into integrity.
I'm going to take curiosity. I think that is just really important, and I think pair that with a growth mindset. I think being curious, but then also being like wanting to take that and grow and do more to innovate. I think a lot of parallels there. And I think also a little bit of humility. The person who comes in and wants to learn from the other people around them. I think being in construction, we have a lot of people who have been in the trades for a lot of years, and somebody coming straight out of school understanding that while you have skills that you can bring to the table and we want to hear your voice and your ideas, that there's also a lot of people who have been in the field for a lot of time and know their craft. And so just being willing to learn from others, I think is really important.
Okay, so going last, everyone takes your words. But I would say entrepreneurial spirit is big because sort of to your point of when you're interviewing people, you've already sorted out they have the qualifications, so you're looking for that extra. Are they going to be a good addition to our culture? So having that entrepreneurial spirit, they're looking beyond, okay, how can I help the company improve? So I think that's a big piece. Generosity, because you're sharing with others. And so not only you have social missions and you have other things going on, but you need to be generous with your coworkers, whether it's sharing your knowledge or sharing your efforts and teamwork. So I think that's something that we look for. And then trust, because we're all in this together, so we need to have a certain level of, hey, I can trust you to do what you said you were going to do. I can trust you that you're going to be open, that, hey, you didn't know what you needed to know here. And so I think that's something that we count on as well. So all different aspects that we look for.
That's cool. And maybe to try to engage the audience in answering your question so you can see it instead of hear it. How many of you work at some form of employee-owned company? Hands up, please. So snapshot for you, okay? Or for each other. Keeping them up, please. How many of you, keep your hand up if you're in the role your company hired you for? So something happened if you're still there. Somebody's moving around. So if you can, everything that they said, but if you can investigate appetite for change, what's worked so far, our companies are able to, Carolyn and I got paid yesterday, pretty confident we're going to get paid again in 2 weeks. There's a lot of headwinds, there's some turbulence in the economy. Whatever we're used to when we drove away this morning to come up here, we better all be driving home thinking, how do I support change? How do I bring those things? Because we can say, I get uncomfortable with employee ownership of that it's a lot of cupcakes and pom-poms. Like my eye like twitches like a Bugs Bunny cartoon. There are the good times, but if you talk to people about what is the most meaningful experience that you're employing in the company, they never talk about the good times. Pardon my direct language, when the shit hit the fan, I was cared about, we reduced our hours, we got creative. They go right to, when I would have been laid off and forgotten, somebody had my back, right? So it isn't easy. It isn't, as much as the Vermont community is thriving with employee ownership. Carolyn and I are coming in from New Hampshire. We got to be ready to change and change again. So the talent you're bringing in, a little bit of a restlessness that they can share examples of facing sometimes extraordinary workplace change and leaning into it or doing what they need to do. Because we're gonna all likely, we get the gang back together in 2 years. Many of us are gonna be doing different things for our companies if our companies are still open. So again, I don't mean to be a total bummer, but we need to, with recruiting and retention, we need to be real. We work for pay and benefits, get that out of the way early, but when you're drilling in, who's somebody that can change, who can reinvent themselves, or we can say, hey, I need you to do something over here because you're the right person and you're curious, we'll fill in the knowledge. And that's something that Carolyn and my leader is very aggressively doing, because we have to be a different company as soon as possible to keep reinventing yourself and extending what's been a really good 56-year ride. Other questions from the audience? Comments? Anybody have some gold you want to share? You're just sort of bursting to share. I'll bring the mic up so you don't have to. All right. There's good things going on out there. Please, you want to shout it?
Share another characteristic that I look for recruiting, that's team building, right? Learning. How that great. We just talk to somebody if you're going to be able to actually teach them anything, or are they just coming in with all the knowledge that they ever want, and that's it.
That's awesome. Thank you. All right, we can always back the bus up if something comes to you later. Let's shift to the tail end of the session. We had recruiting. Where does ownership play in with the retention? What are your thoughts? I'm intentionally leaving that wide open for you and see how you do, and then if we need to narrow it down, we can. But what are your thoughts on ownership in retention?
I can start, I guess. So I think one of those words that I started with was opportunity. So a little bit of being willing to change, being willing to have the opportunity to do something new, or to see the possibilities. So we're going through a CEO succession thing right now, which is huge. And what we decided is we looked internally and said, you know what? We've got great people here. Somebody can fill that role. So I think that's one of the ways. So I've been at Hallam for 32 years, started as a temp. So, there is the opportunity to change and do different things as an employee owner. And I think you see it over time. You see that everybody's worked hard. The company is doing well. Share prices go up. Sometimes things don't go well, but you then see everybody knuckle down, try to come up with ways that, hey, we can fix this. We can make it better. So I think continually engaging folks helps them see a path for something new.
Nice, thanks.
Yeah, and I will add to that in the fact that, just thinking about every employees, and I say associates, it's because that's what we call employees, so they're synonymous in my brain sometimes. They're all on different parts of their employment journey, right? And so as somebody comes to work in your organization, they have a life outside of your organization that they're bringing to work with them. They might be early career, they might be mid-career, they might be there for 8 years, and they see the dust on the table instead of the roses on the vase on the table, right? And so it's making sure that you are continuously bringing the vision alive in different ways, right? There's the shared culture of employee ownership, the big pieces of the profit sharing or the stock and things like that that are annual and seen. And then there's the little experiences, and that goes to my experience in that conference room where I was asked for my opinion, right? That was extremely meaningful to the fact that I'm talking about it 12 years later, right? And so it's making sure that you're looking at the various different profiles of employees that you have, and you're bringing those little nuggets of experience to life regularly. Jesse runs Problem Busters at Hypertherm, where we get big grisly employment or even technical problems that come together, and we invite employee owners into, or all of our associates into, who want to participate into these groups. We've had technical problems solved by non-engineering associates, right? We've had really tough cultural questions with impact and input from our associates. So, those are the big ones, but I think honestly it's those little moments. It's those little moments that continue to impress upon me, even at the level that I am, even with my tenure, that I do have a voice and my voice matters. And as a leader of other people, it is my responsibility to make sure that that comes to life every single day for them as well. But I think that realization that work is work. And I've said that to candidates, I've said that to my team. There are gonna be days where it is just a paycheck, and I'm glad it came on Thursday, right? And I think that's just our shared experience as human beings coming together in a collective place, like an employer, but making sure that those little nuggets come alive as much as you possibly can, that, weave in to the big pieces that are very out front and central to your organization.
Yes. Do you have something you want?
Yeah, I think on retaining or thinking about those people who have been at the company for a little while, speaking from experience, I think by then people have probably seen some of the good years or the good trends, and they've seen some of those maybe rougher patches, and then hopefully kind of the upswing after. And I think thinking back on some years that maybe weren't as great for PC, the sense of community and that we're all in it together was really, really strong. And now that things are, the trend that we're on right now, it makes it feel that much better. And I think just having that sense of community is really unique, and trying to get people to see that. And I think it's easier to see on the other side, but I think that's one thing. And then I think just being willing to adapt. And one thing with construction is a lot in PC and where we do work. It was pretty common to be in a spot for a job for a couple years and then have to go somewhere else and continually have to move. And one thing that we've tried to do in the last couple of years is really, really focus on regionalizing and making sure that people can live and work in the places that they love. And it goes back to having a life outside of work, and work is work. And being on the road is really hard, and it doesn't mean that it'll never be required, but it just gives people, I think, a lot of comfort and loyalty to the company to know that we're trying to find work in this region where you are, and that you're not going to have to move your whole family or find a different job to stay there in a couple of years. So I think that's another thing for us that's been really great.
Yeah, and I completely agree with everything that's been said. To piggyback a little bit off of something Carolyn was saying was, in thinking of herself as a leader and the responsibility she or any leader has, I think ensuring that those sorts of leadership qualities of open book management and so forth are being exemplified across your organization and from the very top is really crucial. And I want to give a couple of examples of some things that we do at King Arthur that I've seen lead towards helping with retention. So one is we have a biweekly town meeting. We actually used to do it every week. We dialed back from that because we were finding that every week was just a little too frequent. We found a really nice place with bi-weekly, but this is led by our CEO, Karen Kohlberg. And Karen does a masterful job of addressing absolutely any and every topic related to the business within these meetings. Sometimes they're very joyful meetings. Sometimes we're celebrating. And other times they are hard conversations, whether it be something within our company, something within our local area, or something that's going on within the world. We're having the courage to be open in our communication with each other, again, from the top is really important. And along the lines of the openness, the other thing we do is open book financials, in which all of our employees have full access to the entirety of our company's financial data, up to individual salaries, compensation. Past that, though, any employee anytime can go into our Power BI portal, see real-time financial data, how the company's doing. I think that goes a long way towards employees being able to really see, I matter. This isn't something that's shielded from me as an employee. I'm able to see what's happening, and to double down on that, within those town meetings we have every other week, once a month, I should say, someone from our finance team, either our CFO or our controller, will come in and share at a high level how we're doing financially. And not only that, they'll also share what that means around some of our benefits, such as profit sharing, which have a direct impact on our company's financials. And so it's a very tangible conversation in which we're being entirely transparent and open with our employees as to how things are going. And I've just seen time and again how that helps individuals to feel engaged, because they know exactly what's going on, and they know what they're doing and how that's impacting the company's bottom line financials.
One note you just reminded me. So just a funny kind of story, just a warning. The transparency on finances, if you're recruiting somebody or somebody's joining you from an organization that was not transparent on their financials, have a little, as their leader, have a little side conversation with them that's going to be openly shared and transparent. We were going into an industrial recession as a global economy. We have a global company of just under 2,000 people, and we hired a new recruiter, and sales weren't all that good. So in the world of recruiting, typically when sales go down, so do roles and so do jobs, and then recruiters get laid off. And so onboarding a new recruiter, didn't have the conversation fully about what they were going to be exposed to, and all of a sudden, all of the graphs start coming up on the big screen, right? And I could just see their face go completely white, because they came from an organization that didn't show all of the info. It is a shift in culture that reminded me of just making sure that before somebody's going to go walking into a room and seeing how your company's going from a financial perspective, that they have that reassurance that this is part of our culture, and they're going to be seeing and experiencing things that maybe they haven't had in other organizations as well.
Yeah, just because a human is nodding back at you doesn't mean they understand anything. They're saying, I see that you're standing there. That's really what that body language is. I'm aware there's a human in the room. So if you're talking about anything, just a couple key points I hope that you take as considerations, as takeaways. Unless they explain back to you their level of financial understanding or how a business works, then you can't project on them understanding and knowledge. You have to let people, we're a manufacturer, we start with, we had a chef start, and he was shaking with panic on the first day. He's like, I haven't used a computer in 20 years. I'm totally freaked out. Like, well, we have a class for you. Just because we have these weird generational things that, like, the young people are supposed to be tech savvy. Anybody in here use Oracle as an ERP system? Does that make sense to any age group? No. So just, give them that pass. But if you're looking at technology, you're looking at finances, you got to make sure you get them over time comfortable enough to share that I don't know what a share is, because that's probably common in your companies as well. So meet them where they are. There's all kinds of work on equity and inclusion. Well, under that giant umbrella is, where are you with financial understanding? Where are you with understanding how a business works? Do they get what your business does and how you make money? That can come over time. And I think another important thing to keep in mind is it's a willingness for all of you to acknowledge in your own way. I'm not looking for agreement, I'm just being factual. We're in a global mental health crisis, and we haven't actually figured out work. We're all trying, which is probably why we're not the only ones here to learn today, But we haven't quite figured it out. We turned the stadium lights on after COVID, whatever that means, and we never redefined the game. And we're trying to figure it out. So if you bring this back to recruiting and retention, people are coming from workplaces, again, most commonly because of a bad relationship with their leader or values, those other things. But we don't have it all figured out. We got to be careful with that. We can't oversell on the front end because you go to retention. Don't oversell the ownership thing if you go ownership. You know? What are your foundational values? What is your way of working? Start there. Try to re-engage folks that have been there for a while. You know, there are certainly some eye-catching stats that can be helpful. I had a conversation with somebody who's been with us for a long time. We have a pretty standard kind of boilerplate, 8% of total comp. We're a 100% ESOP S Corp. 8% of total comp after 1 year you earn for your first year. Does everybody know the NCEO stat for the median average for an ESOP account nationally? So 2 things that helped this person, which I mentioned to new people on the first day to welcome them, to kind of give them some framework and see where that curiosity is that Corey just shared it, Corey Rosen from NCO just shared it in Tampa, and I think it's still just under 50% of low-income working Americans have 0 saved for retirement. That's brutal. The median average they just updated on NCO site, I think, is the median average for ESOP participants. So this could be 30 years, this could be less. It depends on the size of the company. You have to have the caveats when you're sharing it with new hires. Is $152,000 or $155,000 in their retirement. You know, so you can have some of those numbers to pull out. But when it comes to retention, we have an enormous challenge ahead of us because you're going to have a lot of people from the audience, whether it's yourself or not, who has heard in the last 6 months, this isn't the company that it used to be. Right. What's the hard truth is that, thankfully, because if we stayed the same, we'd be closed. And our shares would be worth nothing. You might be vested, but we're here every day to make this business profitable and ideally pleasant to work at. But we're here to run a profitable business, and we've got some headwinds, right? So something around, I think, for retention is sometimes having some really hard conversations about the change, and we had to let it go. We have a 32-year machine operator who, during a town hall, said, I don't see the management team walking around. You used to walk around. It's not the same. Well, we have a lot more global and remote hires because we have some of the highest, some of the lowest unemployment in Lebanon and Hanover, just south of here, or in New Hampshire. There's no one left to hire to fill those jobs. Our company's dramatically changing. I kind of want the people running the company to be focused on that, not walking around shaking hands, right? So it invites some potentially challenging conversations, but if you can get people on board, and just a closing point is, if they don't know what they have, then it's pretty hard for them to compare it to something else. Do you talk about other similar companies? Do you talk about, and we're a manufacturer, do you talk about trends in manufacturing? Do you talk about other ESOPs? Do you talk about other co-ops? So the more you can sort of help them feel like a bigger part of something, the more likely that you can make some gains in that retention. All right, so we're almost at time. Any last thoughts on the panel? Any last questions? Go ahead.
I don't want to hog it. Anybody else have a question? Okay.
They're looking to you, no pressure.
Last one. So the panel was really helpful in giving me attributes of things I might consider when looking at possible new candidates. But I have an important question. Here's a hypothetical. There's a new position, and we're thinking it's going to pay about $40,000. It's a competitive world, and I'm competing against other employers that are trying to, or other companies that are trying to bring a person in. At $40,000, is it an advantage for a person to come to a ownership culture company? And how much? If I'm worried about my competition going up 10% on what they might offer that candidate, do I have anything to work with by saying, this is ownership, you know, and you have an opportunity for the future.
Audience want to tackle that one? You ask hard questions.
Okay, sorry.
It's great. It's awesome. Do you want to take a crack at it?
I'll take my crack at it. It's not going to be for everyone. That's my honest answer, is there's going to be situations in which you face the inevitable fact that the individual that you may feel in that moment is the most qualified. They might not see that value in the ESOP, and that will happen. It happens to us all the time here at King Arthur. And it's a conversation I often have to have with managers too, in which patience is going to be key. We're not always going to be on the cutting edge of paying the absolute most for the talent that we're looking at. We look at our employee value proposition holistically between compensation, including things like ESOP, of course, salary and profit sharing and benefits, all these things. And so I've just come to accept that there will be instances of individuals who might look at things differently. Everyone has their own priorities when they're looking for a job. For some people, it's making the most money they can possibly make in base salary. For some people, it has nothing to do with money. Maybe it's all about the technology they get to work on. And for some people, it's community, it's culture, it's ownership.
It may or may not be a plus.
It may or may not be a plus, is my honest answer. Yeah.
I would completely agree with that, right? So I think about Melissa's keynote this morning. It's how somebody wants to work, right? So there are many different drivers of somebody looking to join your company. To echo Mike, there's times where money is not even an issue. Like it doesn't come up with the same level of importance that it might with somebody else. But I am going to say it depends, because if you're just saying, hey, I'm going to offer $40,000, but you're going to join an ownership company or an ESOP company, it's what else? Like, what does that mean? Like, what is your total rewards philosophy, right? If it's numbers alone, they're going to go to their lifestyle and say, is that enough, right?
But it's safe to say all you guys are happy you joined.
Yes, absolutely, right? And that's where I think it was, for me, I was looking for, the money was important, yes, but I was looking for a change in how I was allowed to do my work, right? And that came alive once I joined Hypertherm, right? But they also had a total rewards package that wasn't something that I was turning away.
Selling point than the money.
It depends. It depends. People have bills to pay, and we'll never understand somebody's financial. But it still might be if one organization is offering quarterly bonuses and short-term rewards that outplay the longer-term impact, right, of an ownership culture. And rewards are balanced between short and long-term rewards. They might have debt that they're looking to get rid of, right? And so, or their financial situation just might be such that short-term money coming in is more important than any dream about how they work. So it really depends on the candidate.
Yeah, and I would add to it that, you have to be competitive compensation-wise. I mean, I think that's number one. And I think you can do as best a job as you can as explaining some of the financial aspects of it. We're hesitant to give exact numbers because who knows what the next year will be. But you can give broader ranges. You can kind of explain, hey, we have a 401k and we have this ESOP too, and this is kind of how they all work, so that you're giving the best education that you can to them. But I also think, as you're evaluating your candidates are evaluating you too. And if it isn't something that's extra appealing, you might not have the right candidate. It just might not be that match.
I think before COVID, it worked to say ownership is a long-term game. So I don't know if other ESOPs in the room, how you kind of cage this for new hires, but I say generally 5, 6, 7, 8 years, people really start to appreciate their share values. It's a long-term game. Who in the room is having a hard time with long-term thinking, with our politics, wars, environment? That's a pretty tough sell. I personally, as an employee ownership advocate, think it's the biggest obstacle. Is that, the Department of Labor, I think it's 4.2 years is the average tenure now. So we're basically saying, hey, no problem, just work 2 careers, it'll get really good. And they're saying, I'm afraid of the fuel truck. I'm afraid of the grocery store checkout person telling me a number that's twice what I'm used to for less. So we're trying to, in that regard, and that has to be, balanced, reasonable compensation, make sure they understand it. If there are shares, there's profit sharing, those other things. What are they really making an hour, kind of thing. But there's some challenges for the long-term game that ownership can be for wealth building. So what are those shorter-term, nearer-term, meaningful? What's that distinctive value that your company, from the work experience, the company values, promotions, sense of something bigger, sense of belonging? Those are probably what we're all going to find ourselves focusing on, because it's pretty hard to sell 7 years from now for most people in the world we're in. And again, I don't mean to be a bummer, but let's be real with each other, please.
Well, it seems to me that the employee stock should be considered additional, right? Like, you need to be competitive on your short-term remuneration, right? That's just baseline to be there. And then as you put it forward, like, you shouldn't be withholding that short-term because you're going to get it later, right? That's not a benefit. So you're competitive. You may not be the top for that short-term, but then the ESOP is a bonus for later.
Yeah, employee owners are happier, healthier, and wealthier. There's studies to prove it, there's evidence, and that's the case. And so it's really, what I'd like to do, as we're getting close to time, is leave a couple minutes for just chit-chat time, or if you want to come up and ask a question you might not have asked in a room, we got a lovely panel that'll be happy to answer your questions. But I think it's really what I would like all of you to consider is, let's finish where we started. The activity on the 3 words. Do that in your company or your co-op or your ESOP, whatever. Do that. Pull that essence, one, for the exercise to help talent acquisition, so it's a practical business need, but to re-engage people, to just pause a little bit, and what does it mean to you, what's meaningful about it, and have them talk to each other. So it's not the president, you have a great president who's an incredible orator, we have one too, that has a limited value. Peers and the folks they work with on their team, if they can hear that and you can nurture that, that's energizing the daily culture. And so hopefully a little bit of that came for you with this conversation today with the panel. Hopefully by the end of the day you stack up a bunch of that and go back with some energy, but also some very practical things that you can apply. And have a few that you know are going to fail, but try anyway. Go make some good trouble out there. All right, I think we'll land the plane here. So if people want to come up and meet the panel, they can. And otherwise, we'll call it a conversation. So thank you very much to the panel.